So now we're going to move on to our last session of the day, and I'm so excited. So right now, I'm going to add Dr. Sam as a co-host. Actually, I'm going to remove a couple people as a co-host. So remove, we're going to remove Dr. Cadet. Thank you, Dr. Cadet. So Sam, welcome. We've got Dennis. I thought Dennis. Welcome, Dennis, to a co-host. Leah. Hi, Leah. Make co-host. And then do we have Julie? I don't know if I see Julie. All right, let's see. Sam, did you go ahead and accept?
Yes, it did.
Perfect. And then I don't see Julie, but I think we
Is
should get
Stephen here
started.
too? Stephen?
Steven. No, I don't see Steven either.
Okay, so I guess we're waiting on the two of them then.
Yeah. Do you want to get started while we wait for everyone to join?
Absolutely. There is plenty of conversation to be had.
All right, I'll
Oh,
turn it over to you.
all right. Oh, all right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. You're here for Unseen, Unheard, Unstoppable, Navigating Self-Advocacy as a Disabled Employee. And now this is a group conversation from several of us who have all of us work in different aspects, really, of the disability slash accommodation system. So we all have slightly different perspectives to bring to this conversation. And I'd like to give everybody a chance who is participating to introduce themselves. We're going to hope that if Stephen and Julie make it here, that'll be good. I am Dr. Sam, Dr. G. I am a human resources, basically disabled human resources leadership new gen. Understand that, since I am human resources, I have that little bit of the enemy in there, but that also is what I am doing in order to try to bring progress and bring my knowledge as somebody who is disabled into human resources. I'm going to pass it on. If Dennis, if you'll introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Dennis Tran. Like I go pronoun he him. I'm a Vietnamese American storyteller, disability neurodiversity advocacy, and I have my background working in various sectors, including entertainment, tech, digital health, and media. And I kind of done a lot of like advocacy work in public speaking, peer support, and consulting on accessibility, inclusion. I mostly focused on like the intersectionality between AHPI and neurodiversity, disability, and mental health, and reshaping perception around that. But also, I advocate for building neuro-inclusive, neuro-affirming workplaces, for community for partnering with ERGs, educational institution, nonprofit, and media to kind of help that and kind of building representation and authenticity in the workplaces and experiences as well.
Thank you so much. Lee, if you want to go introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Leah Reinardy. I use they, she pronouns. I'm currently joining you all from Madison, Wisconsin. I'm sitting at my desk in front of a big wall of artwork, and I'm wearing a gray and green sweater. So I approach this conversation from, oh, wow, we got a lot of Wisconsin in the chat. I'm going to be very distractible. I'm just going to own that. It's late in the day. This is when you booked me. This is when you got me. To finish my introduction, I'm really approaching this conversation from a couple different perspectives. I'm coming at it from that HR accessibility intersection as a professional, and I'm also coming from it as a human whose doctors really do refer to them as an interesting teaching case. So really trying to find where those things meet in this conversation because a lot of times it's seen as two different sides when there's a much larger ecosystem happening.
Awesome. Thank you, Lee. And Stephen, happy to see you. If you will introduce
Hey,
yourself, sir.
how are you? How is everyone? I hope everyone is doing amazing today and enjoying this amazing conference, Rethinkability. My name is Stephen McCoy, and I am from North New Jersey. I have Usher syndrome, which is a retinal eye disease that causes blindness and hearing loss. I am a Black male. I have a full beard. I have a dark navy blue. Is it navy blue? I'm not sure if my eyes are deceiving me today, but it's a sweater, a light sweater, and I have a bald head, and a wide smile, as some would say. And I'm actually a journalist. I've been a journalist since 2011 professionally, and I got my start working for the Walt Disney Company. I started as an intern, worked my way up to a host for Radio Disney, then Disney Theatrical for Aladdin on Broadway. I was inducted into the Disney Alumni Association. I then started my company, Spoken Entertainment. That's when I started to actually struggle with my eyesight. I had no idea I was going blind, but started walking into a few walls and then, was diagnosed. And just to make a long story short, I then um, founded a nonprofit organization called Spoken Heroes, just being able to give back to the community and making a difference. And by the way, I made history as the world's first Black deafblind journalist, and I want to continue to use my platform to just pay it forward for all disabilities and all people. So thank you guys so much for the love. I love the comment. I love you guys.
Thank you so much, Stephen. All right. So as you can see, there is a pretty big variety kind of in this discussion, and we have been having some of the most interesting conversations over the last month and a half working on figuring out and planning the content for this. But I think I'm going to open it up with fire and be controversial because I know everybody has a very strong opinion on this. What would you say is the single most common thing an HR department or manager does that unintentionally makes self-advocacy more difficult? And of course, I have my own opinions as an HR person. I also know what I've had to tell people they could or couldn't do. And by people, I mean managers usually. But all of you are coming from so many different backgrounds. So I am really interested to hear.
Hey, Sam, real
Yeah.
quick, Julie joined. So,
Oh,
Julie,
Julie's
if you
here.
want to say
Yes.
hi and introduce yourself really quickly.
Hi, I am Julie, and I could not find the link to join, so I am late, but that's pretty standard. And it's nice that we have such accommodating people here. And there was an email that said, I didn't even tell them I couldn't find the link. And there was an email that they just sent that said, for ease, here's the link to join. And so I am here. Hi.
That is beautiful. That's like literal definition example of accommodation, just doing it automatically and realizing what's going on. I love that. All right. So anyway, actually, you know what? Then why don't we have you start it off, Julie? Because I know you have a good opinion on this. What do you think is the single most common thing an HR department or manager does that makes self-advocacy more difficult?
I think, especially when you tie it to a disability, it is viewing that as an inability and especially seeing the need as something that's a personal deficit rather than something that, hey, I just need something to be fixed, which we all understand that in the workplace. We need computers to do our job. We need desks. Some positions need multiple monitors, and that's reasonable. We all understand different needs for different positions. And instead of taking that mindset and applying it to the individual, advocating for whatever they need, oftentimes I think HR and managers, because of how the world sees it, but views the disability and the ask itself as a negative evidence that the person can't do the job when actually what they're asking for is showing that they can.
I'll agree with you there. And like you said, every time they're tying it to disability, I find that that's the biggest problem that comes up and the biggest place that they make mistakes too, because they're not thinking of it the right way, like you said. Dennis, Lee, Stephen, what are your opinions on this?
I can add on to that. Like it kind of led to the layers of like how the world views disability in general. And it's like how this perception of like the medicalized world model of disability, where it's a deficit, it's the fault of the individual of disability, where they kind of see as difference as less, and like how the different way of your thinking, different way you're learning, or how you're trying to process information, or how you're just kind of being doing as like you're incapable, or you're less than, or you're not able to function how I'm expecting you. And there's like that perception of like, how you always have to be on top of everything all day, or there's not understanding of like fluctuating energy level, or how kind of work is very differently. So understanding that the differences is like, different is not less. It's just meaning that you need different things to function, and like you need different accommodation or tools to kind of work with it out. So sometimes like, hey, I'm so like for example with my ADHD and autism, like sometimes I can be attention to detail at a certain time, but oftentimes like I'm also missing the detail as well. So sometimes I'm not like good at very much like data analytic role or something like that, or maybe I actually need extra support, or an extra person to kind of look things over to make sure that I'm actually hanging everything there. Although like strategically I'm very analytical and very attention to detail, oftentimes I do miss it here and there, because like oftentimes my brain does its own thing, and does get bored, or does get overwhelmed, and I miss it. And it's not like something that I'm not being careless or reckless. It's just how my brain process. So it's just like understanding those nuances really helpful, and just like understanding how my energy level can fluctuate. Like just because I show up like in the morning, I was very like on top of everything, like in the afternoon, my energy level just dipped down. It doesn't mean that like I'm less capable. It just mean that, hey, I should need more flexibility, more understanding during that time, as opposed to like saying, oh, I'm incapable, or I'm inconsistent.
Absolutely. And Dennis, if I could just piggyback a little on what you stated, this is Stephen McCoy speaking, by the way. And also even what Julie mentioned, I believe, I'm not sure who whether that mentioned, it might have been you, Graham. But the I think employers often they think business wise first, and they think about the of course the capital, and could this person be a liability? We don't want to be sued. So, and we also don't want this person to happen to just slip and fall. Although it may not be any sort of disability with walking or your legs, but somehow I would just keep it on the eye myself as a deafblind person. People automatically, specifically employers, may just start to make up assumptions in their mind that had nothing to do with my disability. So I think it's just a lack of awareness, which is why I feel it is so important that we continue the workspaces training, the DEI training. It's extremely important, because a lot of people are being left out. There's a lot of jobs that absolutely can be filled. We're not saying that people with disabilities, we should just hand all of us just any job. Of course, we all have to be qualified for the job, but please do not turn us away if we're qualified, even sometimes more so than the next applicant. Don't turn us away just because we're requesting for accommodations. I've been someone who I've requested for accommodations and I've been turned away. And it's not a great feeling. And that's why it's so important to have these dialogues, so that we can figure out ways, even for those who may be in this room that are able-bodied, that are working in human resources, to be able to see and hear us, and know that a lot of us are just ready to just work and be able to contribute to society. And if you do allow there to be employment for those with disability, so much of the government funds can be used for so many other things, rather than us accepting government assistance. And sometimes we only may be accepting those simply because we're often not given the chance. So I just wanted to make sure I said that.
I do love your point about them making their own story, because since I have multiple sclerosis, I do have a tendency to walk into things. So I go out of my way to make sure that my supervisors know I'm not drunk. I just have MS, and I'm going to keep walking into things and be covered in bruises at all times, because you just don't want them to assume. All right, Lee, I really want to hear your answer to this.
Yeah, this is Leah. I agree with a lot of the things around, again, it's a very like a legal and risk focused approach, right? Coming from the HR side. When I think about like what's one thing in the process that unintentionally makes as the employee self-advocacy difficult is medical documentation. This can be a soapbox for a very long time. That could finish the rest of this panel if we really wanted it to. But doctors are not typically trained on how to write these notes. There's a lot of difficulty in communication. The access of healthcare itself is difficult. Timelines can stretch out much longer. There's really a long list of things. And there are times where maybe there is consultation needed with a medical provider, and that causes a lot of delays, and it puts a lot of employees who aren't trained in this process in a lurch because they're not sure what their doctor should say, or when doctors are looking to them asking what should be in this letter.
That is definitely my big thing. As a person, I actually did for a healthcare company where I was the person who was handling all the accommodation requests and getting those taken care of. You'd think it'd be different in a healthcare company. But actually, I found that unfortunately, sometimes the supervision in a healthcare company is amongst the worst in saying, they need to prove it. Like, actually, not really. And you're just putting up an obstacle by doing that, because you're putting them through so much stress and anxiety that they have to prove that they have something that they know that they have. So actually, on that note, how do you guys personally define disclosure in the workplace, and how has that evolved with your experience, of course, that we've all had, unfortunately, in the workplace? Who's interested? Who wants to go first? What? Yes, Julie.
I can take it.
Go for it.
Disclosure first, a lot of people's question is, what do I have to disclose? When do I disclose? Am I lying if I don't disclose first? So quickly want to address that. You get to disclose whenever you want to disclose. It is not lying to not disclose in the interview process. It's not lying to not disclose at the beginning of work. It's not lying to not disclose ever. It is not lying to not disclose until you need an accommodation. For some people like me, I don't need an accommodation for the interview process often, and I don't need something oftentimes when I'm starting my work, but then a few months in, I might realize, oh, I do need something now. So for me, in my experience, one time, and what got me into a lot of this, I didn't know I had rights for a lot of years, but then when I did, at one job, I have a service dog who alerts me of seizures. And I was going through a time period where I was having more frequent seizures. And so I asked if I could bring my dog in. And they said, well, you have been fine until now. Why do you need it now? And it wasn't in a, I'm curious, can you help us understand kind of way. It was in a, I think you're lying. This sounds suspicious because you look fine kind of way. And so did a lot of research, learned a lot about the ADA. And so for me, the question was, how do you define disclosure? I have learned, and this is how I do it in my life, but it's most important to disclose the parts that are necessary for the accommodation, but also the parts that make you most comfortable. There are some people who introduce themselves as, hi, I'm Julie, I'm autistic. I don't personally, so I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't offer that up whenever I am asking for an accommodation. Some people do. Do what makes you most comfortable. Do it at the time that makes you most comfortable, and when it serves you specifically the best.
I definitely agree with you there. It really is a matter of your personal comfort and how you feel. I mean, I personally kind of made the transition into HR disabled because I felt like I could be, the advocate and be open. And it's still hard, honestly, even being the HR department, to be open about it and say, well, hey, this is what I have going on. Dennis, what do you think?
I think I think for I'll talk from the experiences as like from a non-parent disability. I think it's easy to hide, and it's easy not to say you have a choice because not it's not disability is not in front of you where you have to confront it every day. But it's also easy for you to kind of like be like your voice is not heard, or you're kind of like not in a place to you get to pick and choose like when to disclose or not, and it kind of based on preferences, like what Julie mentioned earlier. It's about like where or not I feel safe in space and environment, or where it's okay for me to be vulnerable to share this type of thing, because oftentimes like sharing disclosing thing is could lead to like getting fired or getting being like taken advantage of, or even like kind of being used. And I've been on both sides of the experiences here where like in my earlier career where I was diagnosed with glaucoma at 17, so I was have partial blindness, so I don't necessarily know about like needing to actually utilize like accommodation a lot for everything I do. I just need don't drive, and so of course it was just like those nuances. But I was undiagnosed neurodivergent. I didn't really know that until like years later. But for sake of like in my early career, I was like fortunate to be working where like people were who were able to kind of accommodate me or understand me. Where I kind of like, although I wasn't like open about my disability to the people I work with, but then sometimes like I kind of like sell things where I was like I did ask for a ride and stuff like that, and then when people just got curious about it, they're like, oh, like why are you taking the bus or something like that? Like I can give you a ride, stuff like that, and then just asking about that, it allowed me to kind of like start opening up to them and just asking for accommodation and kind of getting a ride from my coworker to the workplace or to work event and stuff like that, or just even like just or ask for additional support, and they already kind of be like, and I remember like when I worked, and I was like I was like I usually have to walk a 20 plus minute or so like to kind of get walk to the office, but then and also kind of take the shuttle bus, and sometimes like and I kind of open it up to my boss about I don't drive and stuff like that, and they just kind of allow me to work from home, and like or they can drop me off at the bus stop and stuff like that. And then that's that kind of way of like how supportive it was like when I was safe to open up about my disability and not being able to drive versus like oftentimes when or instances I was in with an organization I was part of, like yes, I actually was called weak for my disability because they actually knew that I couldn't drive and support myself, but they kind of had an envy mindset to that where they were kind of showcasing, oh, he's a weak leadership, like he probably needs a strong team, and like there's like kind of a much more like micromanagement type of thing that like I was there for, and it was something that's like why I kind of feel like it's been a hit or miss. So that's why I kind of felt like disclose like when you're comfortable, when you kind of feel safe, or like or if the workplace is in a place where they actually can support you, because oftentimes it actually does more harm. But for the sake of where I am now in my stage after being late diagnosed, unmasking and like being more open to my disability publicly, I kind of just been like more like upfront about now with my disability and neurodivergence, and like and just kind of speaking what my needs are and stuff like that, rather just hiding away from it. But oftentimes I come it comes with the risk of that, which is like I'm getting taken advantage of, which I have been taken advantage of, or I've been like kind of abused before in the workplace. Yeah, sure. Like, but at the same time, it's like at the same time, it allowed me to be show up as authentically me, and like adult to find community, find support, and find other people or the right environment that actually value inclusion and support in different ways. And so that's how I can be navigating disclosure in those terms.
That is awesome, Dennis. Stephen, I saw you nodding so hard, so I'm just listening.
Yeah, I would definitely with fill in every word Dennis and Julie were saying. For me, I've definitely had so many different experiences while working. I recall in my younger days that I used to hide my disability. And when hiding my disability just to be as inconspicuous as possible, I just wanted to be just like everyone else. And then when those issues arises of not being able to fully hear what my manager had just informed me of the task to do, it became very difficult. And I had to eventually mention my hearing disability. And when that happens, especially for some reason, when people see me, even to this day, I get the responses, oh my God, wow, you don't look like you have a disability. Well, at least you don't, or that sort of. And I'm like, what is that? What is, so we have to also get out of that mindset that a disability has a look of one way, just like being able-bodied doesn't have a one way of a look, So I just know I eventually, when after being terminated from that position, moving on to two other jobs, where though I then started to mark, because my mother, she was on me about it, and marking on the application that I do have a disability. Again, going back to what Julie stated, you do not, anyone who is listening, you do not have to disclose your disability. But I think even in just making sure that you put it on paper for your self protection, in case there's ever a litigious situation that arises, you're protected, and you did state that you had a disability. That doesn't mean that I have to, after being hired, that I have to sit in your office and I have to just discuss my disability with you. And if I choose to, because what was questioned to me was, well, you didn't tell us that you had a disability. You didn't say that. Well, I didn't have a reason to, but I did mark it on my application. I just didn't have a reason to up until this most recent point. And at that point, I didn't know that I was going blind at one point in my life. I had no idea. I just thought I was being like clumsy or something. So I just think it's so important to just make sure on paper to mark that you do have a disability. You do not have to. Again, that is your own personal decision. But in case ever there's any litigious situation that arises, you are protected because you've marked it on paper. So,
Documentation is everything. That's
yeah.
everybody who's here in HR is like, yeah, document it. If you didn't document it, it didn't happen. Unfortunately, which shouldn't be the case necessarily, but that's okay. Leah, how about you?
Yeah, my answer to this has really changed over very recently, a couple weeks ago. I've been in a spot personally, professionally, where I've been working through new things. I think there's often this thought of like, I have this disability, I disclose this disability, whether that is like the macro level, I check the form, or I tell the people, and that is it. But our bodies aren't static, right? Like we gain more as we age. And I'm at a point now where, as of a couple weeks ago, I've started to use a cane for mobility. And it has completely like reframed how I've seen my daily commute, my time in and out of the office. Even though I'm managing the same things that were invisible, I'm using air quotes for those of you not watching my screen. When that turns more visible, it's really interesting to see the reactions and the questions that come in. Yes, I've joined Club Cane. I have one of the ones that like automatically snaps when you take it out of the little folding case. And the only comment that I have really loved about the cane is somebody did compliment me when I got off my bus the other day. This is a tangent. I'm going to get back focused. The point being, I think of disclosure. The plain language definition is disclosure is showing up. Every day I show up, I am disclosing. And for me, it looks like something new, hour to hour sometimes. For instance, if you had me talk at 9 a.m., I would have been a lot more focused than the answer you just received. So disclosure is the act of showing up in the moment and really bringing what you have. You don't have to explain why, but sometimes just existing is disclosing.
I said it in the chat, but I have the neo-Joaquin that that Kelly Bundy designed when she got MS, and it's awesome. I see it as fashion accessory. I don't care if it's you're gonna have to do it. You may as well enjoy it. That's fine. Okay, so on that topic then, and I think all of us have some advice on this. What questions or what ideas do you think that disabled employees should be aware of or asking themselves in order to go into the accommodations process best prepared for everything?
Well, first, this is Stephen McCoy speaking. I do use uh, person first language first. So just I like to consider everyone a person with a disability over disabled employee, because the thing is, see, we as people with disabilities, we understand that all it is that there may be little limitations there or major, and we can do anything that we put our mind to, and if we as long as we request accommodation. However, I don't think the able-bodied person who don't have the lived experience as we do, their mind is just going to be kind of boxed in. So I like to try to move forward and not have those antiquated ways of description, if you will. But to answer your question, can you repeat that again?
Absolutely. So
Uh,
what questions or ideas do you believe that employees with disabilities
oh yeah.
should be asking themselves or thinking about in order to prepare for getting accommodations that they need in the workplace?
I always say for me, I before applying for a gig, a job, or an assignment as a journalist, is this an assignment that I feel that I'll be able to do? Because there are some jobs that, like I personally, I don't feel that. Although when I was like I think 18, I worked at FedEx for about 2 weeks, but I don't believe that I would be a good worker at FedEx anymore, specifically because of me being deaf blind. I don't feel that that would be a safe situation for me. However, I'm sure there may be accommodations in place for me to be able to excel in that sort of role. But I always think it's important to ask yourself, is this something that I can do? And if this is something that you feel you can do, and if you need accommodations for it, go for it. I think and employers, they shouldn't just make the assumption that we can't do it. Just reverting it back to self and making sure that if you know that you can do this, if you know that you can conquer this role, to just go for it. That's what I would just say. Yeah.
You make an absolutely important point. It's like, can you do it? As long as you can do it, and there is a reasonable way that they can make that happen. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. You make sure that you're thinking about what it is that you need to accomplish, and if you can do it, then ask. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I want to also just add, there may be a job that someone maybe is desiring with a burning passion, and there isn't anything in place or any sort of accommodation in place for them to be able to excel in that role. Then I would say to that individual, it's not all about ourselves, it's also about others. So I say take the stand, go up to meet with your legislators or even tech geniuses, if you will. I mean, to see if there's something that can be created, and you can, absolutely create something, an amazing accommodation for not only yourself, but many people who also desire to succeed in that role as well. So please don't give up on your dreams. Like, I understand that there may be certain things that, you may need a wall to get across to the other side, but I just think if you continue the dialogue, if you go to the right people, the legislators, pushing for different things, whether it's funding as well, or meeting with scientists or technology, um, developers, I think that there is a possibility, of course, that if there's enough people, it can happen. And it starts with us. So.
Absolutely. Julie, I know you have an answer for this, so I'm just waiting.
I do.
I also
Okay,
want to
I'm
call out
going.
too that Deborah has her hand up.
Go ahead.
Deborah, did you have a question?
Oh, I just wanted to see if I would be answering Samantha's question correctly. I just wanted to well, first of all, sorry for getting in late, but I also have MS and I travel with my job. And so I need the accommodations like with the hotel and then with traveling on the plane. So far, I haven't had any problems though with my job. They have accommodated me fully with things that I have to have. And I'm not a walking MS person. I'm in a scooter and I can't walk. So once I get to my room, like I need a walker. And I'm not ashamed to say that I need a commode because I can't get to the bathroom in the motel. And so, but they have been very, very good to me and not giving me any problems. And whatever it is that I need, they take care of it for me. So I would just like to say that.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Love that.
You're
Love that you're
welcome.
getting those accommodations. All right, so
Yeah.
Dr. Sam, back to you.
All right, Julie.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah. I love hearing examples of times that people are getting accommodations that they need because it is more rare than the opposite. So thank you for sharing that. I am going to talk about first what employees I think should go into knowing, what questions they should ask themselves, but then also what they should know about the process itself and their rights. So one, it's really important to know what accommodations you need. That's a big question because a lot of times people just know that they're struggling and they know that it's tied to the disability, but they may not know exactly what they need, or they may not know what's allowed to be asked, or they may think there's only things that are allowed to be asked, and how to figure that out. So one, you can ask for anything that would work for you. There's no limitation to it. Now, a company can say, hey, we can't provide that. The example that I give is to make the point is if I worked at a zoo and had a service elephant, I could ask to bring my service elephant to the zoo. Now, the zoo could say, hey, that is going to, it's kind of unreasonable and it's going to cause an undue hardship, which they're right to say that. However, the next step, and this is part of knowing your rights, if they just stopped it there, you could push and say, okay, can we continue looking for other accommodations? But ideally, the zoo would say to me, hey, we can't accommodate an elephant walking around the zoo with guests and it wouldn't fit into buildings, and how we can't accommodate that. However, can you let us know what you need so that we can figure out some other accommodations? I'm not wrong for asking to have a service elephant go there. I'm not wrong for that. I get to ask for that. But I also need to be open to some effective accommodations that will work otherwise. So that's really important to know. And then another thing that I think is really, really important is to identify where it's an actual limitation in your body. And I don't think limitation is a bad word. Every human has limitations. Somebody who's 5 foot has different limitations than somebody who's 6'8", and it's just based on their height. So don't think limitations are a bad word. And then what are things that are barriers, and those are external of you. Those are barriers in the environment, because knowing that is going to help you find the right accommodation to request. And an example on that really fast, I work with clients to help them through the accommodation process. Sometimes at the very beginning, sometimes in the middle, sometimes when they're going through the EEOC stuff. But a lot of times I have people come and say, I need more time, but I don't think I can ask for more time. Or I think that's going to show that I can't do my job. You can ask for more time, but almost always people who think they need more time will ask, are there times that you meet deadlines? And we end up finding out things like when they get instructions in writing, when they get templates to work from, when they're trained properly, surprise, surprise, when they get what they need, they actually get their job done. So is it more time that they need, or is it written instructions instead of just verbal? Is it working from a template? Is it being able to focus completely uninterrupted for 2 hours in the morning? Those are accommodations that help the person meet their deadline on time. But we, as people with disabilities, oftentimes blame ourselves because the deficit model, the medical model, it is deficit focused. So we're like, well, I'm the one who's wrong. And so we look at us to, well, I need more time because I'm the problem. So I have to have more time to be able to do it. When actually, a lot of times, the issue is with the environment. There's a barrier external of you. So be able to differentiate between what is an actual limitation inside of yourself and what is a barrier externally, and where the burden to change actually lies.
I think you make a very good point with the elephant example, aside from being memorable. What I've always kind of said to employees, you just have to right size kind of the request of what you're going for. Think about the actual environment, like the physical environment that you're working in. And this makes a huge difference when you're talking about whether you work at a small company or mom and pop company versus a large one. I will say that you can get accommodations. Sometimes you can get them much easier at very large organizations because they have the disposable income for it. They just budget for it. They assume it's easier for them to just be able to do it. Whereas your small companies can't necessarily do it as easily, or it might be too much of a financial burden. So it's definitely something to think about as you approach it, but still approach it. Absolutely. Leah, do you have anything?
I mean, the TLDR, the too long didn't read of it all, is ask for what you need. Like, right sizing is important, but I also think that, and this is again your friendly neighborhood accommodations person, one of them. I don't know you. I don't know what you need. I don't know your lived experience. Please come to the table with your lived experience. I don't like to make assumptions. So I think that's my biggest advice, and that's something that I'm encouraging employees to do is if somebody's like, oh, I'm requesting something kind of in this vein, I'll say, okay, what do you think you need? Without worrying about the employer interpretation. I think that's a really important part of self-advocacy. And then the other thing, and I will not speak on behalf of everyone, but sometimes I get employees that check in with me if it's a longer case and they're saying, hey, I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to check in. Please don't feel sorry. Keep me accountable. If you need to check in on the status of how something is going, check in on how the status is going. Obviously, maybe not every day, but I think that that's something that people don't realize that they can do as well is if something is taking a little bit of time, ask for that status update, just see where things are sitting and if there's anything that that you need to do at that time.
Absolutely. And especially for those of us who are disabled and we're a part of that process, it frustrates the hell out of us. I promise you, when it's taking way longer than it should sometimes to get things to happen. But that just, unfortunately, organizational red tape is universal, put it that way. Dennis, what do you think?
So I think with this one, it's like it can be tricky because sometimes like you don't that person with disability do not have the language or understanding of what they need. Because, for example, for me, as to who was like late diagnosed with autism and ADHD, I didn't know I was asthma or emotional blindness for quite a long time, and I have like poor interoception, so I didn't really know like what my needs are, and sometimes I would blame a lot for my vision when I bump into things or like kind of hit myself, and people always have me, what's wrong with you? Or like watch where you're going. It's like sometimes like I don't even know. I kind of like internalize ableism to myself and be kind of like processing all that stuff. So oftentimes like I kind of felt for instance like identifying what makes me feel safe or what makes me feel comfortable opening up to other people about, or kind of like having other people to talk to about my experiences and having allyship in those way where people can help me process, help me understand myself to be able to ask for what I need because oftentimes I don't even have the language to describe that. And oftentimes like I realize that like understanding like organizations who are very intentional and who take the time to build a psychologically safe environment or like where there's like a psychological agency, it really is game changing because oftentimes like people with disability are they're very intersectional with other culture, race, or gender queerness or other low income or whatnot that make up who they are. So it could definitely be tough. I remember like kind of navigating through various environment and kind of realizing that like just because an organization claims they're inclusive or like or they kind of share identity doesn't mean that they're inclusive at all. And there's like a lot of different factors that has that. So of course, like they may not even know how to support you at all. So it's often very difficult to that. I remember like a positive example was that like I was working for the Autistic Society of America like a year ago. Like when I was like I remember on day one, my manager kind of told me and say she was like, "How can I best support you?" And like and all this, and they kind of give me like ways to kind of make uh make a way to kind of support me in various way, but also how they kind of approach it was it's embedded into their culture of psychological safety is their number one priority, and they also kind of was supported on maternity leave and all this stuff like so I kind of watched how they do what they say they were going to do, and they kind of it's been embedded into different culture and offering like flexibility, like autonomy, but also like in ways that like supported my various needs without me having me to ask for it. I didn't even have to ask for like any sort of accommodation because it's already equipped built in. So I definitely think about like universal design in the workplace and how like we build an environment where you don't have to kind of you could just show up to do your work. And it was like I think it was very easy because for me it's like I didn't really love to do social media work. Although I can't capable of doing social media work, but of course like I should need a job at the time, and so they brought me in to do social media work, and so but then they made the job so easy that I actually enjoyed doing social media work and actually grow in ways that I learned to analyze social media trends and analyze metric that I would not be able to do. And I would end up hanging in other environments. So of course I realized that environment does play a factor to it. So it's just be intentional with it and identify like what makes you feel safe, or you need that to be modeled to you to feel safe in a certain way, and then to be able to navigate those spaces where you can learn to take up space and ask for what you need, as opposed to like just like kind of diving deep into and being like desperate and just putting yourself out there to every single job. Just be intentional, like what my needs are, what are my requirements that would need to thrive in a certain role and certain environment, and just be able to kind of go at that. And then of course, like if you're neurodivergent and or like ADHD autism, where you thrive in interest-based role where you're kind of passionate, you may need to kind of find environment that actually allows you to thrive, that actually allows you to work with your brain. Because oftentimes, like as late diagnosis, you kind of come with skill regression. You have a lot of imposter syndrome that you may be able to do one thing before in the past work environment, but you're not able to do it in a certain environment now. It doesn't mean that you can't do the job. It's just that you need certain understanding from employer that they may need to understand like, hey, you got to do skill regression. They got imposter syndrome that you're struggling to do your job. It's not your fault that you're deficit or anything, that you just kind of need that understanding, that safe space to kind of like, oh, like ask for help, ask for accommodation, ask for support you need, and to kind of like as you kind of get yourself back up and rebuild your skill set from the skill regression, and give yourself like the self-compassion needs time to go through all this stuff, because a lot of times like it's a lot of trauma, workplace trauma, and like a lot of like grieving that comes with a lot of this stuff, and like that you kind of go through. So give yourself grace and self-compassion and kind of navigate through this accommodation process as well, and asking for what you need and showing up.
Absolutely, Dennis. All right, so we're down to our last 5 minutes, but you actually just transitioned us into a great thing because I'd like to end this on a positive note. And I saw in the chat that people were asking about what their green flags are, like what should they look for in organizations. And again, where all of us kind of have a little bit of a different background on this, but I will definitely say when you have a company that already has things available, that just assumes that you might need something, just assumes that any of their employees might need something and makes them proactively available without you having to even approach them. for accommodations. That is a huge thing for me. But there are a lot of different green flags. Leah, what do you say?
Ooh, on the fly. I would say clarity and transparency and communication is big. And then I also think, and this is again tricky given that we've talked about how 85% of folks typically have a non-apparent disability, but I also think that representation speaks
Representation is
at many
huge.
organizations. If people are coming and staying, that's a pretty good green flag that something is going right.
Absolutely. I think definitely view the audience at work and see what you're going to be working with. And if it all looks the same, might not be the best environment for it. What do you think, Julie?
Is the question green flags for companies or specific companies that we see as green flags?
Well, the question in the chat was what green flags to look for to find a company, but by all
Okay.
means, if you've got green flag companies, I am all about supporting them.
Okay. Any company that uses Disclo, I think is a green flag company. And you can ask that up front, or you can ask Disclo if they're a company who uses them. But I think if they have an accommodation process defined, which you can ask up front, you don't even have to ask it, just do you have an accommodation process? That is oftentimes green flag. If they use a third party to do it, I think that's a red flag. So if they have it in-house other than Disclo is good. But also, do they show up as who they are? Do they show up too rigid? And not rigid in a corporate way, not rigid in a personality way. But are they showing up how they think they're supposed to show up? Is that how the company expects everyone to show up? Or are they showing up authentically? Because if somebody can show up authentically when they're interviewing you, almost certainly they're allowed to show up authentically other places as well.
Absolutely. What do you think, Stephen?
There we go. Yeah, I agree with Julie. And I also think, even when you're looking through the company website, just see if they have an accessibility department, see if they offer any diversity and inclusion program, what events that they do throughout the year or annually, do they give back and to the community? Those sorts of things are really important to look for, and I find those to be green flags in the company.
And it's always legit to ask about corporate social responsibility. In fact, you throw it out there, they just think that you're like smart. But honestly, they should be making that very public. You should absolutely know what these organizations are giving back to the community. I don't care what kind of organization it is. What are they giving back? What are they doing? What do they care about? So we are actually coming up out of time, but this has been an amazing conversation. Just really interesting to hear everybody's different perspectives on, how to represent yourself at work, how to show up at work, and just how to make things happen. And I just really appreciate all of the input, and awesome. And Greer, we appreciate you, as we want to definitely point out.
Thank